Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to From Busy to Rich with Wes Young. This is a podcast designed to inspire advisors to increase their profitability and quality of life. Today, you're going to learn about how to have a vision for your day and for your month and for your year with some really practical tips from Wes. So let's go ahead and dig in. Wes Young, how are you today?
I'm fantastic. Andy, how you doing?
I am above average today. Justin, how are you?
And somewhere in the middle between the two of you, I think.
All right, good.
Average and not quite fantastic. So
good. All right. Well, it's great to have you both here. And Wes, we're going to talk about, this is a two-parter, folks. So, if you've ever, I don't know if folks are old enough to have this now, but back when you didn't know what the next week's episode of a show was going to be, sometimes you'd be watching a show on television and you're like, uh-oh, and then it's a part two coming next week, right? So that's this week. This is part one. We've got part two. So this is a traveling light is what we're going to be calling this. And Wes, I've actually heard you teach on this topic before. And so if you could just set us up with sort of the larger context of what we're talking about today, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, you bet, Andy. So the premise of this kind of centers around this idea of the gap, that all of us in life have a gap between where we are and where we want to be. And the gap between where we are and where we want to be never goes away. It actually just moves. And I think in its healthiest form, this is actually a wonderful thing because the gap between where we are and where we want to be, it actually is where like anticipation lives. It's where faith lives. Faith is the substance of things we hope for, the evidence of things we've not yet seen. Mm-hmm. It really is what gives us the energy we need a lot of times to push through difficult circumstances, to do things that ordinarily we wouldn't do unless we had a bigger vision of tomorrow than our current today. And so I often get the question, well, what about contentment? If you have a gap, you're saying you can't be content with where you are. And I want to talk about that a little bit because contentment has nothing to do with the absence of ambition. I believe with all of my heart that if you don't have a bigger vision for tomorrow than your current today, I don't think you can be content with where you are, because I think what it lends itself to is like a state of passivity where life is just really heavy when your memories exceed your dreams. And I don't think that was the way we were meant to live. I think that if we do that, life becomes like this just heavy, lethargic, clunky kind of place. The things are never going to be good again. On the opposite side, though, this is where the dance, and it gets really tricky, is I can get so focused, though, on the future of where I want to end up, of what I want to accomplish, where I'd like to go, that I don't take time to be happy with where I am. And I don't think that's a good thing either. I think I think either way can make you do life really, really heavy. And since we're talking about traveling light, I think if you go too far one side or the other in your gap, if you go so far that you're just focused on where you are and don't have a bigger vision than tomorrow, I think life is heavy. And I think also if you focus so much on the future that you're not taking the time to really appreciate and have gratitude for where you are on your way to where you're going, I think life, it kind of becomes this endless set of problems that never get solved. Lou Holtz, Coach, do you remember Coach Lou Holtz?
I got to meet Lou Holtz once.
Did you?
I got his autograph in like 1990 or 1990. It was like 1988. I went to a blue and gold game, which is like the Notre Dame intra squad thing.
Fantastic.
And I got to get his autograph. So yeah. Me and Lou go way back.
You're best friends. We'll have him on the podcast.
Right. Anyway, Lou Holtz, what do you say?
He'll be on next week. Just stay tuned. He's coming. Maybe. If not, it's Andy's fault.
Wes, go ahead, Wes. What's your Lou Holtz story?
But Lou Holtz, he has a great quote that I think speaks deeply to this. It's that it's not the load that breaks you down, but how you carry it. And here's what I know, Andy, and I'd love to get just your thoughts on this stuff. You and Justin, is like the gap's not going away. It's in us. It's the gap between where we are and where we want to be. And all of us have this desire to want to make things better tomorrow than they are today. Right. And I think if we're not careful, when we travel this gap, which we will be traveling for the rest of our lives, because no matter how far down the road you get, there's always another over there. And I don't think that's bad. But I think if we're not careful, how we carry the load of our gap can be extraordinarily heavy. And life becomes like this endless problem that never continually gets solved instead of an exciting adventure that we get to pursue. And I think there's a way where we can travel light. I think we can make it a exciting adventure we get to pursue. So just love to hear a little bit about your thinking around
Justin,
that.
what are your thoughts on that? Listen, folks, just to a little behind the curtain, like we prepare for these. I've looked over the outline. I still wrestle with this stuff, Wes. I mean, it's, I want to be prepared with a good answer, but I'm going to throw it to Justin for a second, because this is just a quandary. This is some deep stuff that really, really matters. It's how we live our life. And I don't know what your beliefs are, those who are listening, but I think you get one of these things called life. And so this is big stuff. So Justin, I'm going to throw it to you while I maybe think of this a little bit more. What are your thoughts on traveling light?
The hand grenade. I'll jump on it first.
That's right. Thank you. The Captain America.
Like, speaking of hand grenade, honestly, like, we start talking about this, or anytime I'm dealing with something that seems stressful or exhausted, like we were even joking earlier about first world problems, right? Yeah. Like, I go back to my military days. For those of you listening, a lot of you don't know my background. Like, well before I was in finance or anything like that, I was in the military. No one was in the military. I was in one of the greatest units in the world. I was the American Special Forces. I was a Green Beret. So when I started thinking about like the gap and the load of how you carry it, like, I think back to like truly like stressful moments for me, whether it was, while going through training or then after training, actually, like in combat. And I think it's interesting because it applies like all those periods and everything else. Like, it was very difficult to try and carry through those moments, and very much applicable, right? Like how you carried it. Like it made a huge difference on how people viewed the situation, because some of them were dire, right? Like some of them had this point of like we're not going to make it. And so there was no point of like moving forward. And you'd see people break down in the middle of combat, things like that, like guys that were well trained and just like, and you see that in life, right? Like maybe it's not in combat, but just in life, people just stop trying, or like feel like there's no hope and they stop, or the other way, right? Like they're not stopping to enjoy the moment. Like, hey, we just made it through that one. Before we go into the next one, like, let's high five. Everything's good right now, right? Like, yeah, enjoy it and celebrate it, because you know what's coming down the road, right? So,
awesome.
Well, yeah, it's interesting to hear that example of, and I always want to hear more behind those stories. So maybe that's a separate podcast of stuff you can tell me without me disappearing of the combat. Stuff, but
promises.
So, yeah. Wes, my response to this topic is that I think about how, and I think about this, with politics, people, it's like one or the other. It's these deep, it's like very polarized. And I think that people treat this like polarized, like either you got to go, go, go all the time, and you're this person of deep ambition, and it's like, I just go, 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 or you're lazy and you just sort of sit around.
Yeah.
And I think the reality is that, and I'll share a very quick example. And I heard this story first from a guy named Charles Swindoll, who's a great teacher and preacher. And for decades he has been. And he just tells the story of running into a gentleman that was just always going. And he said, are you worried that you're going to burn out? And he said, well, I'd rather burn out than rust out. And Swindoll's answer was, well, the problem with that is either way you're out. And, I think that if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably in the burnout category. You're probably not in the rust out, and we feel like there's this, if I'm going to choose one, I'd rather burn out. And again, I love Swindoll's wisdom, which is, well, then you're still out, dude. Right. Yeah. And so I think that for those of you who are listening today, keep listening, because you don't have to be out. It's not an either or, it's a both and. And so I want us to keep moving forward and throw it back to you, Wes, with how can we do both? I don't want to burn out. I don't want to rust out. I don't want to be idle and lazy. I also don't want to, run through this one life I have and blink and go, holy crap, like where did it go? Yeah. Because I was burning, right?
You bet. And I think, I've got a question for you that we've spoken a little bit about this in the past, but it's so relevant and true to what I think that the things we need to do to condition ourselves to travel light and actually enjoy life, and also have a deep aspirations of where we're going and be joyful and happy with where we are. So the question may feel a bit of like a right turn, but I promise you it's not. I'm gonna go somewhere with this. So
I'm in the Uber. You're the driver. I'm so
yeah. So think about this. If I was to sneeze right now, what would you say, or most people say?
I would say bless you. And if someone doesn't say bless you, I get mad at them. I've yelled at my children. In this house, we say bless you.
Bless you. Like, that's exactly right.
Right. Yeah.
And
I don't know why, but we do.
No, and that's the thing, right? I was having dinner several months back with my mom, and somebody sneezed, and she said, and we all said, "Bless you," because that's what you say, And she said, "Why do we say that?" And so I thought, it's actually kind of a good question.
Awkward.
So I went to that bastion of truth, which is the internet, and I Googled it, and I actually found that this thing went on for thousands and thousands of years in every culture, every country, in a variety of different forms.
Yeah.
And really, there's three main answers. There's three main answers, and one of them is going to be super relevant to what we're talking about today. But just for fun, I'm going to tell you the other two. Second most popular reason is that it was a sign of like well-wishing, because if you sneezed, it may have been an indicator that you were getting sick. And so originally people would say, "Hey, be well with you. I hope you're not getting sick. I hope things are going okay."
That's practical. I can see that. That makes sense.
Yeah, and I can get behind that. I'm glad people wish me well.
Yeah.
Now, the second, and this is like the third most popular answer, and this one's kind of freaky, is it was a thought to be a sign of an evil spirit either exiting or entering your body when you sneezed. And I guess I kind of combine a look, because if you've ever been sneezed on, I felt like I was being hit by an evil spirit, and it's like
behind me. Get thee behind me, snot ball.
Get back, So it's like, or I guess if I was sneezing and an evil spirit had the ability to get in me, I guess I'm happy that people say, "Bless you, don't do that," So
yeah.
But those were not the most popular reasons. The single, hands down, not even close, the most popular reason that people say that is because we inherited that response. We didn't decide it. Just like your kids are going to go forward and say, "Bless you." Why do we say that? My dad said we say it.
My dad yelled at me. Right. Fear. Just fear.
That's right. But we do. We inherited that response. And if you think about it, in life, there are so many things that we do by default rather than by design. And I think some things are really good, right? Like if your parents, like you inherited a good diet and exercise program growing up, because that's just what they did. And you never like decided it. You just inherited it and you did it. Right. I think that's probably pretty good. Yeah. But I also know there's a whole lot of useless stuff that's not relevant anymore that I inherited, that I find is a part of my default way that I'm doing life, that if I'm not careful, I'm living life that Wes 5 years ago decided it was a good life. And maybe some things were, probably a lot of things are not. And I'm going to tell you, when it comes to traveling light, when it comes to the gap between where we are and where we want to be and navigating that well, I think that there are some guardrails that we have to put in place to do life by design rather than by default. Because by default, I think there's just so easy, like you said, to rust out or burn out. I think you're going to do one or the other by default, but by choice, by design, if we put in place the right guardrails, which is where we'll spend, I know, a lot of our time today. I think it just flips the switch, and all of a sudden you find yourself going through the same things you were going through.
Yeah. They
just don't weigh as much. It's just not as heavy. You enjoy life a lot more and you accomplish a lot more.
There's a level of, man, I was sharing this with someone else the other day that they just got a new car. I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys or not, but they got a new car and I was taking a ride in the car because I was celebrating this with them. Man, this is cool. Like, let's go take a ride in it. He's like, all right. I was like, oh man, your rearview mirrors have that like red thing, the dot, the blind spot thing, And it was a reminder to me that like the car manufacturers have not figured out how to get rid of the blind spots in cars. Seriously, that you'd think maybe that's an option, right? But instead they put in this blind spot indicator. And so it's like, hey, just so you know, you can't see that.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because it's like, you can't see it, but you can see the red thing to know that you can't see something, right? Like there's something in your blind spot.
Yeah.
And that's so helpful. But I am burdened by what you're talking about a little bit, Wes. And I think maybe the listeners, you maybe, or if you're watching this on YouTube or whatever, maybe you are too. But like, there's this realization that like the problem with the blind spot is it's a blind spot and we don't have a blind spot indicator. And so we can be going through life and it's like, man, I don't know what I'm thinking automatically that's not true because it's automatic. It's a blind spot, right? And again, maybe this is circular, but it's like the problem with your blind spot is you don't know it's a blind spot.
That's right.
That's why it's called a blind spot, right? And so help us, Wes, process through today, and obviously we will the next week. But like, how do you find the blind spot. How do you get out of that? Why do you think that way? I don't know. I just think that way.
Yeah.
How do we get out of it, man?
I think you've got it. Like we talk about guardrails here all the time, that what's a guardrail do? It keeps you from straying into like a dangerous, unwanted areas. And I think I don't want to stray into like burnout or rust out. Right. But I will if I'm not careful. So the guardrails that we put in place are some exercises that we engage in, quarterly, but also daily. And it's really, it's 2-part exercise, which we're going to be talking about part 2 next week. But part 1 is built around, the whole exercise is built around this idea of an exciting vision and a grateful condition. An exciting vision and a grateful condition.
Okay.
And there's this one exercise, there, like I always say, there is a big difference between happiness and fulfillment. Like I am very happy once I've had an old fashioned. I can be happy if I've had one. I am only fulfilled when I'm moving towards a great purpose, right? And I'm deeply grateful for where I am on my way to where I'm going. And so this idea of an exciting vision and a grateful condition helps balance me to both of those things. And so I think big part is this, is you start out, everybody, with just taking some time to write out a 3-year vision. Okay. And we start with 3 years, because 3 years it's long enough to where you can dream a little bit. You can get out of your current situation. It's far enough away from your own reality to not like dismiss, the things that are not yet. And I think what you have to do to be complete in this is you really need to cover what I would consider like the 5 big categories of life. Okay. So the 5 big categories would be financial, professional, relational, physical, and spiritual. Mm-hmm. Because I think if you don't, it's really easy to get lopsided in what you're moving towards. Meaning this, Andy, is like you and I can tell stories because we've seen a bunch of people that they spent a bunch of their early life working really hard to get a lot of wealth, and they neglected their health in the process. So because it wasn't a part of that vision they were moving towards. And you know what they're going to spend a lot of the remainder of their life doing? Giving back all that wealth to try and reclaim their health, or we talk about it with relationships. You're never going to be happier than the quality of your relationships. And so if I spend so much time, and I may build a wonderful business, like an amazing professional thing that helps a lot of people, right, but I dismiss and don't really even have a vision for the people I care about most that are my family. And so if I don't have this holistic like approach to it, it's really easy to say, man, that guy had a great life in that one area, but I wouldn't want the rest of it. So
I heard I should say I wasn't there. I had a friend who went to an event here in Nashville, and I'm not even going to say who it was because it's not flattering to this person, but this person's very famous and they have they're part of a TV show and and they were speaking at this sort of leadership event, and they said in front of tens of thousands of people, and I had a tremendous amount of respect for this person until I heard this, but they basically said that like, yeah, I don't have a family. I don't have healthy relationships. I haven't stayed married because I put my effort into my business. That's a decision I've made. And, I guess they were being honest about it, but at no point did the phrase "good for you" come to mind.
No kidding. I
just was sad. And again, I know it's harder to juggle 5 things than it is one.
Sure.
I get it,
And hey, I mean, this is a podcast for financial advisors, right? That we're helping. A big part of our job is to help people increase their profitability and quality of life. But sometimes if the only thing we're focused on is that profitability, quality of life goes out the window. And so like when we're doing this vision for our own businesses, as well as for the clients that we get to serve, I think you've got to take time to really ask the question, what's a rich life look like? Like 3 years from today, if we're sitting and high-fiving in all these areas of life that you and I care about, what does that for you look like in this particular season? Because it's going to change. It'll evolve, I think, over time. But if we don't ask that question, we just default to whatever the culture gives us, whatever, depending on what system you come into in this business, whatever they give you is success. Yeah. And I don't think that's good.
It is not good, Wes. And I think the other problem is that we default to what we're better at right? So disclosure for a moment. When I get in an argument with my wife, I usually go do something that I'm good at instead of figuring out how to get out of the argument.
Yeah.
I'm going to go default to, literally, we'll have an argument. I'll just go work because I control that. And I understand that. And like my email inbox can go from 25 to 0. And I gained that. Like yay, Andy, versus going to do the hard work of figuring out how to find peace in that moment. Right. The point being we default to things that we're better at to the detriment of these other things. But if they're all spokes on a wheel, you can't go, I'm just going to work on these 2 spokes. Like, that's fine, but your wheel is going to have some issues, right? Yeah. And we see this play out. And we see this play out. I'm going to pick an extreme here, but I think those who are listening can relate to this. That, someone else I think that has done this. And again, I have compassion for these people. They're people. They're children of God. They're human beings. They're just like you and I in so many ways. But I think about Tom Brady right now.
Oh,
he has been divorced.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't judge him for that. I just think, man, if Tom Brady can't find a way to make it work, it's proof that it's hard. You have to be intentional about this stuff. I mean, he's got beautiful children, a beautiful family. He's got obviously a ton of success in his life. He's not an ugly person, You mean
some of the ladies like him?
He kind of physically fit. You know what I mean? And the point is, it's not about opportunities. It's about the balance of those opportunities, right?
And I think that's such a good point. And I think that's where we need to have mercy for people who may not have it together as well as you do in the area that's easy for you. Because all of us have areas that we're naturally just, it's easier for us, right? Like you just talked about.
Yeah, like Justin's naturally handsome. Like,
he's got that hair, look at that swafting hair.
Yeah. But I mean, that sincerely, like some people have, like Justin has certain gifts that I don't. Like some people are like their parents handing them better habits with money, or maybe their parents handing them a better example of relationships and marriage, right? Yeah. Maybe it's just easier for Justin and his wife to get along than others. You know what I mean? Like we don't know what people have. Yeah. But Justin, what are your thoughts on like, how do we begin to address or pay attention to and work on the areas that, and again, I'm not picking on him. I'm just using an example. Like Tom Brady couldn't figure out, how to stay married. And again, I'm compassionate for that. I'm not judging him for that, but like, he obviously knows how to throw a football really well, but like, why is this so hard even for the very best of situations?
So I love the analogy of like the title even of this season that we're doing right now, this traveling light. Because if I think about planning a trip, you don't just grab the bags from your last trip, right, and throw in the same stuff. Like, because what if it was 3 years ago and you went like skiing somewhere and now you're going to the Bahamas, right? Like, you're taking too much, and what you're bringing is the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how you approach even a vacation, let alone like when you start talking about things that are truly important in your life, right? Like there has to be time where, like what Wes is talking about, when we get deeper into this exercise of looking at like, hey, where am I? Like this real evaluation of where am I across all these different tiers of things that are relevant in my life or are important. And then where do I want to go? And like, where am I in relation to that? Like, what is like needing the most attention? So like if you're talking about spokes on a wheel, right? You're going to have a flat tire, right? Like where is my challenge points right now that's imbalanced? And I need to go take it into the shop and get a rebalance done, right? Like I need to do
my challenge for that, Justin, is that those are usually the areas that we don't want to. I'll take an example of me having an argument with my wife. It's like I don't want to pay attention to that. I want to gravitate to things that, for Tom Brady, it's probably throwing touchdowns, good modeling, whatever, right? Like we neglect the things that are the pain points, right? So Wes, bring us back to, we've got this, we set out a 3-year vision of the 5 areas.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple things with this. So you kind of get this 3-year vision. I think have some fun with this. Really allow yourself to be a day in the life of you, a week in the life of you, and hit all these areas. And I think it's really important to have a couple types of like goals within that picture, within that vision. One of them is what naturally we gravitate to, which is getting goals. So I'd like to, get to the position where I'm capable of saving X amount of money, or I'd like to get to the place where we have lost this much weight, or, so getting goals are one of those that naturally come to us in all these categories. But I think really, really important and so relevant to what we've been talking about here is also we need becoming goals. What are you becoming in the process of what you pursue? What are you becoming in the process of what you're pursuing? Because what you would never say, like, well, I just taught on this. We'll probably launch it as a bonus podcast, but at our church the other day was like financially, everybody might say, hey, I'd like to get to the place where I'm saving this amount of money and I've got this much saved. And that's fine if you get there, but nobody has a becoming goal of saying, and I want to become super greedy in the process, right? I hope that I have that money. People look at me and go, wow, that guy is the greediest person I've ever met in my entire life. But if we're not careful, we don't have a becoming goal, we might indeed get to that point where we've got a good pile, but boy, we are so wrapped around money. We're so greedy. And, just as by way of funny example, greed's one of those things that's almost impossible to see in the mirror. And I think the reason for that is nobody, if I want to feel not greedy, I don't look at Andy. I go to look at somebody that's way greedier than me. Mm-hmm. Or watch the show American Greed. If you've ever watched that on
I didn't empty 4,000 people's retirement accounts.
Yes, I'm the same, right? So, but really setting that example, I think out there to say, hey, what do I want to become? What kind of man do I want to become? What kind of woman do I want to become? We do it with our team too. Like when we're setting out, we've got a fairly large organization as advisory practices go these days. And I think it's just mission critical to think about what do I want to become in the process of what we're pursuing. So, and I think we may have got Andy frozen on us on the other end. It's very, very still, or he's frozen, but we're still going. So that's fine. But so I think once you set out that big vision and it's a getting and it's a becoming vision, I think those are mission critical. But then here's where the rubber meets the road is I think you got to back that down because that's fun, right? And you do all those things and we've all had I'm going to go here and we're going to do all these wonderful things. But if you don't back it down to that 90-day, and Justin, you're super familiar with this because we do it as a team on a regular basis. That's our big picture 3-year vision. What's a good 90-day milestone? Like what are we going to do if we want to get there? But 90 days from now, what would be a good indicator we're at least moving in that direction and creating what's the vision look like, 90 days from today? So if if it's weight loss, is one of them, usually that is always one of them, or health. And I want to lose, I want to lose, 30 pounds in 3 years, then probably a good 90-day milestone is maybe 3 pounds. That would be a good indicator.
How many pounds did you want to lose?
3 over the next 90 days.
Yeah, so, you said what was the bigger amount?
I was saying as an example, 30 pounds. Like in
right. But my point is that if you say to someone, hey, you think you can lose 3 pounds in the next, what was the time you said? How many weeks?
90 days.
3 pounds in 90 days? Mm-hmm. Like they'd be like, yeah.
Low bar, right? Of course.
Like, I'm a beanpole, and I could be like, yeah, if I wanted to, if I needed to, like. And my point is like that. That's an easy yes, right? Yeah. I love the exercise of like, how do you get to easy yeses? Yeah. But if you say to someone, can you lose 30 pounds? You'd be like, man, I don't.
That's why it's so big, I think, to go back down from the 3-year vision down to that 90-day vision to say, all right, what is a trend? Well, how do I know I'm moving in that direction? Am I hitting? And then this is the last part of the exercise for today, but then you actually have to have activities that you're going to focus on that you believe best position you to get there. And also an assessment, right? Justin brought this up the other day because it's not just what you're focusing on, but it's like, what maybe have I been doing that's no longer serving me very well? That's been a part of my normal that I need to stop doing. So it's not just about adding to the list. It's sometimes about, taking stuff off that's been a part of your inheritance, if you will. You've done it by default for so long, but when you're designing life, which is so different, and I think it's what we're invited to do, it's what our Creator enables us to do, is to say, hey, be creative. Where do you want to go? And in light of that, what are you doing about it? And maybe what's not serving you as well anymore that you want to take off the list.
Well, are we good to move on to part 2 for next week then, Wes?
I think so.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening to today's episode, and we do encourage you to tune in for the second part. And if you like what you're hearing, then I want to encourage you to visit wesyounglive.com to explore some of the trainings that Wes has built, including the Transform University. Make sure you look into that. And remember also to check out episodes 1 through 3 about mindset. Those relate and are a good companion to this Traveling Light content. And we will see you hopefully either on video, or you can listen to us for part 2 of Wes's teaching on Traveling Light. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.